Next, let's talk about worldview. Behind every story is a worldview, whether consciously expressed or unconsciously implied. Determining this worldview is an important step in understanding the message or theme of the story. This picture identifies a Christian worldview, which dominated much of Western civilization. But this worldview often came into conflict with the Muslim worldview. But there was another worldview which preceded both of these philosophies, and that was the philosophy of the ancient Greeks and the Romans, which is pictured here in this beautiful painting. In the very center is Plato and Socrates. This is the Buddha, which represents a worldview that dominates much of Eastern Asia. And finally, this is Charles Darwin in the Natural History Museum, representing a postmodern worldview of naturalism. Mode of fiction. Some common worldviews are baked into the style or mode of the story. The four basic modes of fiction are realistic, romantic, naturalistic, and fantasy. Realistic. This face might look familiar to you, but you can see he doesn't have his makeup on like he normally has right before filming. So it's a more realistic view of him. That being said, how does this relate to a short story? A realistic worldview is one in which good is sometimes rewarded and evil punished, but not always. And that's the most important point. Not always. Romantic worldview. And you can see this fella, Napoleon riding his horse. And I don't imagine he ever actually looked like that. So it's not realistic, but it is romantic, meaning coming from that period in history known as the Romantic era, where ideals were more important than the realistic details. So, how does that relate to a short story? Well, a romantic worldview is one in which good is always rewarded and evil punished. So good might happen and bad might happen in the course of the story, but eventually, at some point in the story, the good will be rewarded and the evil will get their just desserts. Naturalistic worldview. Now, this isn't talking about nature so much as the idea of nature bloody in tooth and claw. And we can see in this picture, this poor man is being attacked, possibly for his money, and they don't really care about him. And the dog, you see, the dog is dead. So, how does this relate to a story? Well, a naturalistic worldview is one in which there's an emphasis on the evil in the world. And finally, fantasy. This one might look familiar to you. So, what is a fantasy worldview? This is one in which magic is real. It happens. Just accept it. Now, an intended audience is also important to understanding the worldview. One intended audience is the commercial fiction. What does that mean? Well, this is written to make money and sell as many books as possible. It has a target audience with very specific expectations. Like, for example, we can tell the target audience from this magazine cover of Conan the Conqueror, and it's in quotes for us: a must for those who revel in sorcery, skullduggery, and sword play. That's the intended audience. But there's another type of fiction known as literary fiction. And it's written for a small group of highly educated readers. It usually has a strong thematic message and may defy the literary conventions of the time. For example, this is Ulysses by James Joyce, and it's almost unreadable. He uses a stream of consciousness writing in which he writes down everything that comes into his head. And it's very, very hard to follow such a thing, but it appeals to a certain group of people, and that's what we call literary fiction. Genre fiction. Commercial fiction is sometimes called genre fiction because it can be subdivided into genres for sales and promotion. Some popular genres include romance novels, fantasy and science fiction, mysteries, adventure, thrillers, and horror, none of which we will be studying in class. Do all stories have a theme? Notice this was a true sign that was up inside of a factory, and it said, "Therefore, whatsoever ye would that men should do unto you, do ye even so unto them." And in case you don't know, that's from the Bible. It's often called the Golden Rule: treat others as you would have them treat you. Okay, so do all stories have like a theme like that in them? Well, the simple answer is yes. However, the theme might not be that important to the story. Themes in commercial fiction generally reinforce morals that are already believed by most people in society, so you're probably not learning very much. However, the theme in literary fiction, on the other hand, can be much more complex and may challenge the culture of the day.